Hey, my name's Raffries. Thanks for stopping by. Please put down those weapons. Let me just say, I have all achievements in Elden Ring. I have over 800 hours in Elden Ring. I have beaten this game with almost every weapon type, including crossbows only. So please give me a bit of good faith to start off with. I will also be arguing that the best boss in the base game is Moog, Lord of Blood. He beat the allegations! Get back, you dogs! Gentlemen, judge me not by my choice of demigod. I am a massive Fromsoft fan. I started with Dark Souls 2, and I've been with the community for all the happy times since. But I was also there for the bad times. When Dark Souls 3 didn't have poise. And I was there when Sekiro didn't let you level up to beat tough bosses. And when Bloodborne didn't get ported to PC, I was there. So before you decide I don't belong here, remember this. I was there! Clickbait and intro aside, I'm making this video in the futile hope that maybe FromSoft will listen to criticism and shore up some of its weaker points. But before we get into the review, I actually want to talk about this B-roll footage you'll be seeing for most of the video because I think it's mildly amusing. This isn't New Game Plus. This is a build concept I call the Grafted Bull Godel. The idea is simple. Use and abuse the tools of the game to play as much of the game as possible with the Bull Goat armor, the heaviest and best in the game, and the Great Turtle Shell, which regenerates stamina when on your back. In the early game, you just use the Winged Crystal Tier to ignore equipment load. In the mid-game, you stack Godrick's Great Rune, the Oath of Vengeance, and Great Jar Arsenal to medium roll in this far earlier than you should be able to. Then endgame, you just medium roll normally with the Great Jar Arsenal so you can switch to a higher damage weapon. I went for the Mesmir Soldier Spear, personal favorite. Love that thing. So yeah, I was fighting Margit and Godrick with what looks like an endgame build. No grinding. I did not grind once in this entire game. This is my first compliment for FromSoft. I was gonna do the compliment sandwich thing, but the middle got too heavy, so I'm making a compliment lasagna instead. It's more filling that way. The massive variety and freedom in character building is why I have 800 hours in this game. I never want to stop having little ideas about this game. I've spent hours not playing, but theory crafting. Oh, if I combine this and that, I can get super high damage. Oh, I've never used this weapon that has this unique feature. I wonder how I can break that and make that really good. Then I put it together as early as possible with my knowledge of the game and enjoy. I once gave the Flamberge the occult infusion with the double slash Ash of War, creating a legally distinct ripoff of Rivers of Blood, just because I thought it'd be funny. All the Soulsborne games have had incredible replayability in no small part to this aspect. But it's time. Time for all of us to bite our blocks of wood and criticize FromSoft. I don't know why people are so sensitive to this. It's like talking to someone in abusive relationships. He's been better lately. Stop being mean or he might make us go back to the hub world to level up. Again. I mean, almost nothing fans say actually make it to the decision makers at game devs, but some things still need to be said, such as FromSoft is lazy. I do not mean the recycling of concepts, mechanics, 3D assets. I'm a Monster Hunter fan. What do I care about that? I am strictly referring to the planning, development, and testing of their games falling short of what they could or maybe should be. Let's compare a well-made game to a wall. Just a standard wall you would build in your home. You need a solid foundation, usually made of stone, wooden beams for support and framing. You run wiring or pipes through it, cover drywall, paint, done. Maybe hang a picture if you've got time. This is what the FromSoft wall looks like. Ugh. Ooh. That is rough. Starting at the foundation, large aspects of FromSoft's vision, their foundational vision of what they want their games to be, have been in place since Kingsfield, long time. So there is some very solid ground to work on, but what the hell is this? This is the first bit of lazy construction. Fromsoft has changed and expanded their game concept almost every game, but they simply have not done the work to ensure their core foundation can support this bare wall. They want to include absolutely massive enemies, faster bosses than ever before, acrobatic movements that zig and zag enemies, bosses all over the arena. And on a purely technical level, they have not adapted to accommodate all of this. The lock on camera is still very similar to Dark Souls 1, where it worked perfectly fine, but now it's outdated. Why doesn't the camera pull back when locking onto giant enemies so you can see them? Why does locking onto these random dragonflies give you the bends? It's because FromSoft is far more concerned with their idea of this BBW, and no one ran oversight to make sure these ideas were feasible. I can't tell you how many attacks I whiffed in this playthrough you're watching because the enemy was so large that any slight movement took them 10 feet out of my range, or because their strange body type magically dodged my colossal sword. Malekith is a perfect example of a body type that doesn't suit the game. He's usually crawling but rears up to attack. This changes his hurt box, the part you can hurt, but not his collision box, the box that prevents you from walking through him. So you're still pushed 6 feet away from him like the Rune of Death is COVID. This makes hitting him, even with a colossal sword, far more annoying than it should be. And imagine claws or daggers trying to hit him. You're only ever gonna reliably be able to hit his legs, and good chance getting there. He spins on a dime and those legs jump. This speaks to a complacency within FromSoft where they don't see the need to improve many core aspects because they haven't collapsed yet. But they aren't getting my OSHA checkmark that way. However, something I can compliment FromSoft for is their drive to do new things, the very same drive causing their foundational problems. Demon and Dark Souls were popular because they were a departure from standard norms, innovative in their own ways. FromSoft could have stuck with that and made 5 more Dark Souls. They clearly got a lot of money to make Dark Souls 2, but they still went, oh, we really want to make Bloodborne though. Then they clearly got a lot of money to make Dark Souls 3, but they still went, ooh, I really want to make Sekiro though. That drive to keep changing, to never let their creativity stagnate across games, is why FromSoft is held in such high regards to this day. They just need to temper their passion a little bit, to ground themselves, develop a foundation that can support these wild ideas instead of just being controlled by them. Now let's check these support beams, and ooh, this just ain't doing it. It's like they just threw wood in the wall for appearances. I would liken support beams to the campaign and progression of a game. It's the framework that the game exists within that guides you along. Let me make one thing clear. Elden Ring is a terrible open world game. I couldn't stand when people said Elden Ring raised the bar for other open worlds. The open world is largely worthless, empty, and just wastes time between the Dark Souls style legacy dungeons. Boy, I sure do love this massive field with 4 bats and nothing else. The landscapes are beautiful, but they could have been background dressing. You didn't need to be able to run through them and waste time. Consumable items are now crafting items because open world. You now have a horse because open world, and optional paths are now whole mini dungeons because open world. Yet despite all these new support beams, these opportunities, the consumable items are exactly as bad, if not worse, than in Dark Souls. It takes much longer to get from point A to point B because Torrent isn't that fast, and the mini dungeons are mostly terrible, very similar to generic Skyrim caves. These don't create a new experience. It's the same Dark Souls formula. It just takes longer to craft items, to ride across the empty fields, to find good shit. This isn't a proper open world map. This is a Dark Souls map that's been inflated. And not proportional inflation, that kind of inflation. It's unnatural, disproportionate. An open world should only be exactly big enough to fit all the content inside. Here's a fun one. Have you ever been to Tombsword Cave? This random cave gives you a cookbook for poison grease and the Viridian Amber Medallion, boosting stamina by 11%, which, in practice, so bad I wouldn't wear it even if I had no other options. It's just the principle of the matter. A small dungeon with a near worthless reward, even for the early game. But it has the same significance as so many of these other random dungeons. Just next door is the Tombsword Catacombs, which give you a legendary spirit summon. In fact, this is the last thing I needed to acquire to get all achievements. This random dungeon, hidden just as well as the cave, had a legendary spirit summon that was keeping me from all achievements. This is where planning comes into play. How did the developers plan for players to explore and find things? How did they determine what is significant? There are legendary spells, weapons, summons, but are they really better than the average counterparts? For summons, yeah, actually. For weapons, some of them, certainly. And for spells, my god, these suck. So you're exploring this massive world where there's no indicator of what's good, what's significant, what's special, but even if you find something special, unique, it might be worse than your starting equipment. There's a quote I always think of on this topic. It comes from Pat of the Super Best Friends Play, RIP, while suffering through Omicron the Nomad Soul. He says, approximately, you cannot have adventure game puzzles in an open world map. And it's very applicable here. This isn't an open world where you craft good gear and thus can get it anywhere, or where better items are always found in higher level areas. You have to find everything by pure coincidence. There are so many weird examples that I could go crazy just listing them all off. Why is Radagan's Source Seal available for free right at the start of the game in this random, no boss having fort in Caelid that you can just pick it up off the ground, but Marika's Source Seal is behind an imp statue, guarded by one of the most annoyingly difficult enemies in the entire game, in the secret super dungeon of the base game? Why are the Guts Greatsword and Giant Crusher just guarded by a small number of decently powerful enemies in the middle of a field? Oops, I ran over and picked it up and then died. Good thing I'm Egyptian, because I take all my possessions with me to the grave. I think the one that freaks me out the most is that the Physic Flask has one location, which you can totally miss. You can just not have one of the most important new features until you reach Lendel, because that's when it unlocks in the Twin Maiden shop. I bet none of you knew that, because why would you make it that far into the game without the Physic Flask? Why don't you just get the Physic Flask for free when you first acquire a Crystal Tier? The Spirit Calling Bell has a similar issue with you getting it from Ronnie at the Church of Ella, but only at night. Very easy to miss. But you can buy that one at the Round Table Hold as soon as you unlock the Round Table Hold, which always happens very early into the game. You know, in a weird way, it's almost flattering that FromSoftware has so much trust, faith, really, in the player base, that they're crazy enough to eventually find all this stuff and make a wiki out of it, which is fair. But you can't have a massive map and then continue placing items and NPC quests the way you did in a smaller, enclosed Dark Souls game. You need to reevaluate how you do things, including leveling. Random enemies give you mere crumbs of experience. You will get the majority of your runes from bosses and the consumable soul items. I usually don't kill a single normal enemy when I do my playthroughs, so exploration is even less valuable. Open world games usually have way more levels, like Skyrim, which has hundreds of levels, but they're skill levels that feed into a character level. The Dark Souls leveling system doesn't fit this type of game. It fits a semi-linear action RPG. I'm sure I'm not alone. When I replay this game, I play it as a Dark Souls game with very, very long load screens. The game had to either greatly adjust how much information is given to the player so they know where to look in this massive map for what they want, or it needed to shrink way down until only the important bits fit and discard the rest. If there were fewer dungeons, but they always had good stuff like a smithing stone bell bearing, maybe more effort could have been put into each one to be special or have a gimmick. Would certainly be an improvement to AI generated cave ending in generic enemy boss number 43. I'm about to move on to the most controversial topic where I will be very negative, so I definitely need a good compliment. Ooh, I love feet. Ooh, I love feet. Oh, man, those feet. Oh, Miyazaki, you've done it again. Feet. That one's not even a girl, and you know what? I'm okay with that. Feet. Man. Okay. I do love the lore. No surprise. This is one aspect where the open world was a perfect fit. Having more room to plant little details like the shaded castle basically just existing to explain who the hell makes robot arms in this fantasy world? Incredible. And many characters in lore are the best FromSoft has ever made. I actually have a really interesting lore theory I want to share. In the DLC, Scadu tree fragments are the discarded pieces of Miquella that he lost when traveling the Shadowlands. These are bits of both his physical body and apparently bits of his psyche as well, so there's quite a few of these. If we look at the map of where they are, we see this guy went everywhere. He made it pretty far up the jagged peak and even entered the abyssal woods for whatever reason. From these travels, he decided or confirmed his belief that his mother did terrible things, bringing war and hate, and that he had to become the new god to bring peace and love. What I noticed, only by seeing this map, is that despite going to some pretty crazy dangerous places, Miquella avoided some big zones. He completely avoided the Fingerlands and the Finger Church, areas where the Greater Will's influence was strongest. Makes sense, as he was not on speaking terms with that guy. He also avoided this corner up here, but he clearly was towards the end, he was tired, he just wanted a critical path it. Understandable. The most interesting aspect of all, he completely avoided the Hinterlands and Bonnie Village. These are very close to a finger field, likely where Marika met the Greater Will, and the Finger Church, where Mommy Finger lives. So if I had to give a lore reason, I would say he avoided these areas unintentionally, to avoid the Greater Will. That's where Miquella becomes a villain. He was a cursed and discarded child. He found hope in the Halig tree, building a home for other misfit toys like him and his sister. He starts off on these beautiful intentions of peace and love and acceptance for all the different species and races of the land that he has already shown he wants to make a home for. He wants to accept all these different peoples. Maybe during the shattering itself, he decided to change the plan, traveling to the Shadowlands, seeing all that Marika had wrought. He's super in with the Hornsets, deciding to fix the wrongs of his mother and evil god and become a good god himself. But Miquella is wrong. Marika isn't simple enough to call evil, but through his journeys in the Shadowlands, he misses out on the truth. Of all the horrible things to occur in fiction, what Marika did to the Hornset is among the most justified. She started her journey with a noble, perhaps selfless quest to protect her people from the Hornset. But power corrupts. Virtues and nobility are twisted into ambition and pride. Miquella never learns the lesson that it doesn't matter who holds the Elden Throne. The instant God doesn't get their way, even a single time, blood must be spilt. The lesson that Miquella misses is that it's not a bad person being in charge of the world that makes bad things happen. It's power over another that ensures bad things happen. This is where Mikola and Ronnie differ. These are clearly meant to be paralleled based on just their appearance. But while Mikola was flirting with his many boyfriends, Ronnie went to college. She's a career-orientated woman, after all. Ronnie had Black Knife assassins under her employ. These are Newman women. Newmans are America's people, survivors of the hinterlands. She certainly knows the whole story with the hinterlands and the Hornsets. She's a scholar of the stars. She certainly knows everything about the great aliens and outer deities, and she understands that the truth of this world is that it's just the front lines for a proxy war between these outer deities. That's why Ronnie's goal isn't to become a new god and rule over the people, like Mikola. She understands that if she did that, she would just be another competitor in this giant arms race between the Greater Will, the Formless Mother, the Frenzied Flame. It just doesn't stop. That is Ronnie's ending. The 1,000-year voyage under the moon, the removal of all these divine aspects, including herself, from the equation. This is not to say all divinity is evil. This is not to say without divinity everyone's just gonna get along. This is to say when it's divinities vying for control, entire populations can disappear the way a plate of garlic bread does in my house. This is the parallel between Ronnie and Mikola. Ronnie simply understands that any single being in charge the way an outer deity, a god, or an Elden Lord can and has been in charge will result in horrible atrocities being carried out by them or in their name. And so the best answer is to simply remove them from the equation, so that at the very least, humans will have their free will and they'll be able to kill themselves in much more moderate numbers. This is what Mikola misses. He doesn't see the dark side of the Hornset. He doesn't see how evil and cruel they were when they were calling the shots. He doesn't see the bright side of his own mother, planting a minor Erd tree as a beacon of hope, or lopping off a braid of her hair to mourn her fallen people. She leaves tree sentinels guarding her former home, maybe just to show, I did it. I have the power now. I could protect you if you were just still here. I could protect you now. Why aren't you here? Mikola never sees this side of his mother. He never sees that side of the Hornsets. I'm sure the dragons did unspeakable things in their own free time too. I'm sure a world of Frenzy Flame wouldn't be as fun as it seems. I'm sure the god of Rot really would make the whole world that bad. I'm sure the Formless Mother really would make us all look like these blood fiends. It can be assumed to some degree that all of these outer deities have some negative effect when interacting with humanity. Like many Lovecraftian stories, just being in the presence, being around, acknowledged, sometimes just even known by a cosmic being of this proportion can have severe ramifications on, let's say, your health. Mikola doesn't see any of this. Mikola doesn't care about any of this. Mikola fully believes that if he becomes God, everything will be okay. He can really set everything right as soon as he has all the power in the world. But we know that's not true. From the words of Sir Ansbach, we know that Mikola's peace and love is really just going to be mind-controlled passivity. We'll all become little drones in Mikola's world. Toys in his Barbie dream house. Mikola is chastised by this random shade or whoever this is for discarding Saint Trina, for not being able to save himself, for throwing away so much of what makes him him in the pursuit of becoming a god. Because he's blinded by this belief that he'll be the good god, when he doesn't know he'll just be another god, the same as his mother, and in the end, a monster. How's that for a theory, huh? Ah, Vadi be damned. Hopefully that's good enough to counterbalance this. Elden Ring's combat is bad. This is the wiring, the plumbing. You need to know, oh, are lights going through this wall? Is there going to be an outlet plug-in here? Is there going to be a sink, a toilet? FromSoft doesn't plan this out super well. They go, okay, you can dodge through this hitbox, so it's fine. They make sure on a purely mechanical level it's possible, but they don't consider the human element enough. I legitimately have to wonder, how does FromSoft intend the player to fight enemies? There are so many attacks and combos, not just Waterfowl Dance, but that will come up, where the player isn't thinking, okay, I gotta recognize that faster and I know what to do. They're just thinking, how? You never want a player to ask how. You want a player to know, I messed up, I know how I messed up, I gotta improve. If they're left asking how, that means whatever signals they're being given by the game, they're not tracking. I would absolutely love to see like a dev stream of some kind where they fight a boss and explain their thinking, their plan for how each attack would be avoided. They don't have to be good at it. They don't have to actually be able to pull their plan off. I just want to know, I just want to see them show their work, really. Far too many attacks are weirdly unclear on when and where the hitbox starts and ends. Especially the AoE attacks seem to have a just don't be there philosophy. A serious problem I noticed is the combo strings are timed far too tightly. So even if you dodge the first attack, you don't have time to dodge the second. The game basically sets you up to take an unavoidable hit because you dodged the first attack, but not good enough. You dodged too late, still dodging the first attack, but not having enough time for the second. Consort Radon has bad and good examples of these combo strings, which, just saying, the first phase of Radon is perfect. Perfect. Masterclass. Just like Slave Knight Gale. Absolutely. Second phase is simply ostentatious. Too many overlapping attacks for me. But Radon has this 1-2 X-Cut combo that literally had to be patched because it was too strict, like I said. But then he has this 1-2 pause, 3. That's good. That's what I want to see. That got me so many times until I learned it, and then it never got me again. That's great. You don't need timing to be crazy strict or obscure. Just make the combos with pauses or maybe variations after the first or second hit, as long as the player can recognize the variation. There's a lot more little stuff I could mention, like too many attacks just ignore poise, that's annoying. Or how so many spells, Ashes Wars, or weapons are just so bad they're laughable. The balance is so off on this game. But I'd rather keep this short and summarize my critiques with a term I use a lot. Visual language. My argument in this video is that FromSoft always paints a masterpiece in broad strokes, but makes the picture too big and doesn't finish the detail work. Just as you can't make out an individual leaf in this painting, FromSoft can't make out exactly how the player should dodge Waterfowl Dance or find important items in this massive world. The biggest flaw with FromSoft as a developer and their laziest quality is that even after so many games, FromSoft have failed to develop a consistent and ironclad way to communicate information to the player without directly telling them through text. Visual language is the system or patterns that the game develops to lead the player to success. Easy example. Any game, Red Barrel, I know it explodes. The only light in a dark room is pointing at a door, I know that door is unlocked and leads to progress. The game does not have to say these things to me. It's a visual language that many games have agreed upon and developed. FromSoft does not have a visual language, largely because nothing is ironclad. Dragon opening its mouth with fire and lightning? Oh, that's a breath attack. Nope, haha, it's a grab. Readying a big stab attack with a sword? That's okay, all my trusty shield. Nope, haha, it's also a grab. This is the peak of FromSoft's complacency. They do not set rules or patterns the player can learn across multiple enemies, because these ironclad rules would restrict them from making enemies the way they want. Thus, every attack is an isolated event, No previous knowledge will help you. The timing, speed, angle, follow-up, range, special effects, damage, all made up on the spot. To show how this could work instead, let me show how I might design a Souls game. I set ironclad rules that a one-handed attack made with a weapon will be rollable, blockable, parryable, and will flinch based on poise, while a two-handed attack made with a weapon will be rollable, blockable, not parryable, and will flinch regardless of poise. It's a simple rule, but the fact that it binds me as a developer allows the player to learn it and react effectively upon first seeing an attack. Even if the player doesn't actually avoid damage on the first time seeing a move, they'll know the properties of the attack because I've developed a pattern they recognize. They know, oh, this enemy's swinging with one arm. I know I can parry that. There's a parrying window somewhere in that attack. I know for a fact. How many times have people played new Souls games and they have to go up against bosses and ask, is this attack parryable? I don't know. And even though it's restricting the developer, creativity shines best amidst strife. I am restricted from making a one-handed attack be unparryable, but it opens so many avenues for interesting mix-ups where a boss does a combo of two-handed attacks but it ends in a one-handed attack, creating an opportunity for the player who catches that. There could be a single one-handed attack and a long string of two-handed attacks so you can interrupt the boss, create an opening where none already exists. And the restriction prevents you from flying off the handle and disregarding the player's side of this equation, waterfowl dance. This would also help with the open world. If there was a consistent way for players to find dungeons or to recognize, oh, this dungeon has this type of reward, Elden Ring almost has this already, with mines giving lots of smithing stones and often the smithing stone bell bearings as the reward. But then you just get a ton of bell bearings in the mountaintop of giants in Farum Azula. No mines needed, they're just on the ground. If the player could see, oh, this place is where I'll get smithing stone. Oh, this hero's grave must give me a weapon at the end. The loot wouldn't feel so random. The player wouldn't be left scratching their head so often. As a final compliment, the drywall, the paint, the hanging picture.
All right, I admit it. Everything is fabulous. The food, the atmosphere, everything's flawless.
I mean, it was never a question. To finish up something I said earlier, I do think Mohg Lord of Blood is the best boss in the base game. The specifics with him as a boss kind of go against so many other problems with the game. I didn't specifically mention the delayed attacks, even though I do think they're very bad in this game, simply because, I mean, what am I going to tell you haven't already heard on that point? But I actually really love Mohg's delayed attacks because his attacks are so wide and big. Like, he's using his whole goddamn body and shoulder to swing that freaking trident, that the delayed attacks don't feel unnatural. That's one of the main things I have an issue with, is when an enemy's movement feels unnatural. They accelerate and slow down in weird physical ways. The Bale tail slap we've all been caught by 100 times, that's one of them. Like, he just randomly accelerates and starts rotating at 100 miles per second. That's a little strange. All the bosses raising their arm in the sky and just holding it there for a minute and then somehow maintaining momentum when they actually start swinging down. That's a little weird. Mohg doesn't have this. Mohg's big ass attacks, they're slow and chunky, but they feel slow and chunky the way an actually slow and chunky movement should. I like them. I also love Mohg's design. I love his drip. I love that he's all messed up with his horns, like piercing his eye. I love how, despite his twin brother looking like a normal human that's been cursed with, you know, like hair, skin, horns, like his face at least, Mohg has a freaking monster face. He has claws and fangs and is like a snout almost descending from him. Oh, it's so cool. I love it. I also love the lore of Mohg. Back before the DLC came out, an argument could be made that Moog was probably the closest to winning. Of everyone, Moog probably could have won. Isn't that strange? Isn't that freaking insane? If you didn't show up in the lands between and Mikola wasn't just controlling Moog the whole time, Moog likely would have been the winner. Who's there to contest him? Think about it. Radahn's down for the count. As long as you don't go to Caelid, you'll never have to worry about him. Godric? Godric ain't stopping no one. Rennala? Again, just don't go into her room and you'll be fine. Morgott? He has no ambition and a bleed weakness. How do you think that reunion's gonna go? So in reality, it's really just gonna end up being a fight between Moog and Rykard, and I would kill to see that shit, man. They have so much bullshit going for each other. Rykard obviously has the most insane stats in the game, but Moog can bleed so easily, and honest to God, Rykard, his forces are dwindling, where Moog just gets stronger every single day. Yeah, I'm big on Moog, but I digress. I'm making the script a week before Night Rain comes out. I have no idea if that game will confirm or refute any of my points here. I'd love to be refuted, but we'll see. I'm keeping this review mostly general and theoretical, but do trust, there's a lot of examples of everything I'm critiquing. I just don't want this to be 2-3 hours long like those other Fromsoft game reviews. So here's to Elden Ring Night Rain. Hopefully you disprove everything I've said. But you know what? Even if you don't, I'm still gonna buy you day one. You know, that's probably the biggest problem with Fromsoft, is that they have no reason to listen to critics, because they're not gonna stop buying their games any sooner than I'm gonna stop buying your games. Thanks for making it this far into the video. If you enjoyed it, a like and subscription mean a lot, and if you didn't like it, well, why the hell not? Better comment and tell me, especially if it's about my lore theory. Anyways, take care.